here too. Oh, hey, what's up? Whoa, that was weird.
That was so strange. It wouldn't let me speak. Maybe it's a good thing because I talk too much. I'm just plugging my headphones in. Give me a sec.
Yep, I sent Mike a speaker invite too, so there should be a notification, and you can request by pressing the microphone in the bottom left-hand corner of your screen.
So here we are, UFO Twitter week. Hey, it's been off to a good start, Astral. Well done.
Right? Nice week to get this started.
Universal timing, my friend. Universal timing. But wow, what a crazy few days. But yeah, it looks like Mike is in the space.
Hey, what's up, Mike? Oh, you might have to click the left on the bottom left again to talk, and then to activate your mic.
Okay.
And then you can.
Yeah. Is that it?
Yep.
Am I there now?
Yep.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
All right. We're here, and I'm on my phone, not on my laptop. So as requested.
Well, thank you so much, Mike, for finding the time. I know you're super busy. I believe you're at an event today already.
Yeah, actually, I'm in Spruce Pine, North Carolina, which is a wonderful little town, and we're having a big alien festival here tomorrow all day. I'm here with Tom Reed, my friend Tom Reed, of the famous Reed family abduction case, the Berkshire's UFO case.
Indeed.
Bruce Agnew is going to be here. David Adair is going to join us, and we're just going to have a rollicking fun time here. And I think this is going to be a continuing event because it looks like they're going to have a really good turnout. So I'm looking forward to that.
Awesome. That sounded very British. A rollicking good time. I like that. I'm going to go forth with that. Thank you so much for agreeing to join us. Astral puts together a phenomenal week, and could it have been any better timing? Absolutely not. I'm very conscious that we do have you for an hour because I know you've got a potential TV interview after us. So I know people will be dropping into the space over the next couple of minutes, but I don't want to waste too much time. So should we just dive into it?
Yep.
Cool. Astral, I tend to monopolize. So do you want to kick it off?
Well, just it being UFO Twitter week, I think it's been a big week for, quote unquote disclosure and information, and new faces are coming in. A lot of attentions to the topic. I'm curious how you got involved in the topic and your interest and your kind of specific research area which you're interested in.
Well, I was kind of born this way. I mean, it's funny. I grew up in the 60s, and people, when I tell them I'm into UFOs, they always assume I watched Lost in Space and Star Trek, which I did, but it was like I was already into aliens and space and other planets and space travel and all that stuff before I ever watched those shows. It's not like they converted me into this. I mean, I remember my first memories are probably of a black and white TV broadcast of a Gemini mission launch from Cape Canaveral. So I watched it on CBS or something. So I just was always this way. And then, as I grew into adulthood and did other things in my life, I went into aerospace engineering, but then I always had an interest in the subject. And then, in the 1990s, I started listening to the Art Bell show, Coast to Coast AM, and was just fascinated by this guy, Richard C. Hoagland, who was a really interesting speaker about artifacts on Mars and on the moon and all that stuff. And I was thinking, well, that's really interesting because from an engineering perspective, it's very appealing to me, intriguing to me, because it's something you could prove. You could literally land and say, okay, is this some sort of weird tubular rock, or is this a support strut? Is this something structural? And then, through a series of not too coincidental events, I ended up meeting him and working on his website. And then I said, why don't we take all these website articles and make a book out of them? And so I got started in the ancient artifacts stuff, and also really with him on the symbolism of NASA and the patches and, the mission patches and all this different Egyptian symbolism and kind of how they operated to this weird sort of occult belief system, which is really hard for a lot of people to absorb, but it is, I'm convinced, a reality. And then I just spread out into all sorts of other UFO stuff. I got a gig on Ancient Aliens, and kind of things have kind of taken off from there.
I first came to know who you were through Ancient Aliens, and my little boy was very excited when I said I was having a conversation with you this evening. Something that really does interest me, with your having a career in aerospace engineering, and your take on. I've read a few of your books, and how do you reconcile your sort of scientific background with your current work? Because it's an interesting interplay between the two.
Well, what happens is if you follow the science, it leads you to the physics. If you follow the physics, it leads you to the spiritual. So you end up understanding that this is a very big universe that we live in, and there has to be a creator, there has to be an intelligence and a mind behind it. And then you start, for me, I think it was this book, The Choice, that I wrote in 2010, where, by the way, I predicted a lot of things that are actually happening today, which I'm pretty satisfied about.
Right.
And you realize that, astrology actually is a thing. And there's a reason why these people believed in this, and it has to do with the way the positions of the planets affect electromagnetic energies here on Earth. And, every thought or emotion you've ever had is basically an electromagnetic wave generated by your mind. So, that's how it all kind of comes together for me. I think I can connect the science and all that stuff. And that's been, it's been an intriguing part of the journey. Maybe you meant something different with your question, but that's the way I look at it. I don't think that there should be a wall between science and the hippie crowd. I think that a lot of their stuff is supportable by science. It's just that most people don't know about a lot of these scientific experiments, and that's why I wrote The Choice in the first place.
Yeah, I've read that book, and I really was quite interested with the conscious thought, with the Mayan calendar and the Hopi prophecies and stuff. It really did speak to me.
Mm-hmm.
Another question that's been on the top of my mind, and it's sort of it's either the whole like Freemasons with ancient alien presence. To me, that is an area I don't know much about, but I know it's something you've delved into. I don't know if you could expand a little bit more on that. I know you talked about it on Ancient Aliens on the Moon, Ancient Aliens on
I
Mars.
lost the connection there a little bit.
Oh, it's probably my
Are we
dodgy.
there?
Can you hear us?
Can you hear?
Hello?
Can you hear us, Mike?
Dun dun dun.
Oh, his connection might have went out.
Just as I
Hello,
mentioned,
guys. You there?
Yeah, we're here.
We're here.
Well, you can't hear us. Well, just write him in the chat, Holly, and tell him that he's just got to jump out and back in really quick.
All right. Okay. You want me to write?
It's a common
I'll write him now.
glitch. Yeah. Cool. Yeah, we'll get him back in here.
Hello?
Hey, what's up, man? It's a common glitch for
Okay.
that to happen when the connection goes in and out. For you to not hear speakers. So yeah, you did
Holly was right in the middle of a pretty good speech there, and I just lost her. I'm like, oh, I don't hear the British accent anymore. So
don't worry. I was touching on the kind of whole, the Freemasonry and the ancient alien presence. To me, that is something I don't know a massive amount of, and I know it's something you've certainly delved into. I just wonder if you could, give some thoughts around that for our audience a little bit more.
Yeah, this is it's interesting. I did write, I think it was Ancient Aliens and Secret Societies in like 2015, and I thought it was going to be about that, like the Freemasonic influence at NASA and all that stuff. And it was really interesting because it turned out being something different in a sense that if you look back on human history, at least recent human history, right, in the last 12,000 years or so, you can kind of go back and now with Randall Carlson's work. And by the way, my book was the first one that had anything on it about Randall Carlson. It's like Graham Hancock, his book was published after mine, but Randall was very generous in providing information about this younger Dryas impact event, which is, I think, kind of when the flood happened. And, as you look at human civilization from there, it starts from the sky down. It doesn't go from the ground up. Human civilization evolves from the sky down. So it starts at high altitude, and that indicates that the flood scenario is probably fairly realistic. And as these ancient civilizations go, Bekli Tepe and the mountains of Ararat and all this stuff sort of descends down into Egypt, you have this rise of secret societies. And I think you can make a really interesting case, strong case, that they were started by some of these Anunnaki guys, and that these visitors came from somewhere else, that they were a form of human, they were a form of humankind, but they were maybe a little different than us in terms of their size and their stature. I don't think they were 18 feet tall or any of that stuff, but I mean, it's kind of interesting, Holly, because like I'm 5'10", and that makes me pretty average in America. But if I were to go to the Philippines, I'd be a giant. And I think the same thing applies to these ancient civilizations. I mean, most Neanderthals, most human beings were probably 5'5", 5'6". And so if somebody was 6'5" or 6'6", they'd be a giant, right, in that civilization. And I think that they sort of became accepted as gods. And I do believe, at least I traced it back in that book, I traced it back to, I believe that Marduk was this ancient Anunnaki god, and his intent was to create the secret societies that eventually became the Freemasons, with the idea of preserving the ancient knowledge to share with humankind when they were ready. And it got, unfortunately, usurped by evil, as these things often do. And I think that's a big reason why we're in the situation we're in today, not just in the United States, but all over the world right now, where we're, most people aren't paying attention, but hey, guys, we're pretty close to World War III right out there right now. And I think it all goes back to, knowledge is power, and some people abuse their knowledge over the years. So that's kind of my broad overview of the whole thing from my perspective.
Awesome. Thank you so much for adding a bit more light to that one. It's something I need to delve into a little bit more.
Because the thing is that when we went back to space, I mean, the people who had this knowledge knew we were going to find evidence of the previous visitors, right? So it was important to them to control those organizations so they could control the flow of that information the way they had forever. I mean, if we had gone into space and gone to the moon and brought back, moon rocks and, let's face it, ancient alien technology, if that organization, specifically NASA, wasn't under tight control, then that information could have gotten out to anybody. So I think, that's kind of how they got involved in the whole space travel thing, was to make sure that our true roots were not exposed to us by those missions and by what those guys found.
Awesome. I just have one last question, and it might be a little bit off kilt, but I'm going to take this opportunity while I've got it. I know you appeared alongside Buzz Aldrin. I think it was on Aliens for the Moon, The Truth Exposed.
Yep.
Did you get a chance to have a kind of off-record conversation with him? Did you get to ask him something that, perhaps you wouldn't ask him publicly? Did you get anything out of that conversation? I would just love to know.
I did not get to meet Buzz, and I would love to. But here's the thing, it's like James Fox has talked a lot about, having Buzz almost ready to sit for an interview. I don't care about the UFOs thing. It's like, I know they saw UFOs. Buzz has told the story in a roundabout way often enough, and he told it really, really well in that episode, in that particular show. That show has got a lot of legs. So you got to give a lot of credit to Bob Kiviat, who produced it, for really producing a show that's lasted for 7 or 8 or 9 years now. But what I would have asked Buzz is, I would have asked him about the Freemasonry stuff. I mean, and I would have asked him, is it really true that, Neil Armstrong was the first man on the moon because there was only one camera and he had to make sure that he photographed the first 30-second Scottish Rite Freemason to walk on the surface of the moon? That's why all the pictures from Apollo 11 are all of Buzz Aldrin. None of them are of Neil Armstrong. And he took a Masonic apron with him, and he held a communion ceremony, as he puts it, in the lunar module before he and Neil ever went out on their spacewalk. And that actually traces its roots back to ancient Egypt, and it's a worship, a form of worship of Osiris. And if you look at all the Apollo symbolism, all their patches and stuff, it's all Egyptian and it's all Osiris. And so, I would have asked him those questions, and hopefully not gotten a knuckle sandwich for my trouble, because I know that he went. I know they risked their lives, and I just wish that he would tell the story before he leaves, because it's a really important story for us to know the answers to everything, It's really important.
Oh, absolutely. Astral, I'll hand back over to you now. I've got my killer questions out of the way.
Well, one of the things I think people are really buzzing about or just having questions of is like what comes next now, or in terms of like the information. And, like Leslie Kean came out, she's like, we're not talking about the bodies, we're not talking about this. But, I wonder like the next stage in terms of like something for like a secret space program, or like kind of like you were alluding to of like a separate, kind of controlling entity that has influenced kind of our society throughout the years in some form or fashion. Do you feel like that sort of is the information that we're going to get, or what do you feel on that? The secret space program, or that a separate entity is kind of acting on its own?
Well, first of all, I don't believe in the disclosure agenda. Anytime I hear that word, I cringe anymore, because it's like the disclosure crowd.
Did I just get rid of it on the
Oh my
title
God.
here?
Well, no, it's fine. They've been talking,
No, just
well, it draws people in, but I mean, the disclosure crowd, as I like to call them, and I'm not going to mention any names, Steve Bassett, but they have been talking about the same crap for the last literally 15 or 20 years. And it never happens. At least it's never going to happen the way they do it. And also, it's a point where I don't know about anybody else, but I've reached a point where I literally believe nothing the government tells me anymore anyway. So they could disclose the truth, and at this point I think almost nobody would believe them. The only people that would believe them would be like 60 Minutes and the mainstream news media outlets, which are having their own credibility problems. So it's interesting you bring that up, and you bring up secret space programs. I've been writing some scripts for the Y-Files channel the last couple of months, and the first thing we did was Solar Warden. And I'm not saying I write everything, but AJ does his own show there, and it's a brilliant show, but made a lot of contributions. And it's like the secret space program thing, after going through that, I don't believe in the Solar Warden story anymore, for sure. I think there's probably a secret space program, because I've got videos. I'm going to show some videos tomorrow here in Spruce Pine of STS-48 and STS-80, and either the aliens called NASA and said, hey, we're going to be over Santiago, Chile at 17:45 tomorrow, you should have your cameras on, or they were testing our own super secret space program vehicles. So I know that these organizations exist, but it's like, to me, there's like so much mud in the water. I can't really see the coral below. I can't see clearly through the water. So it's just going to be, it's going to be an ongoing process. There's going to be a lot more. I mean, we just had this Vegas thing. I'm gonna be on with Tom. We're supposed to be on Fox News tonight. Jesse Waters talking about the Las Vegas thing. You're just gonna keep seeing more and more weird stuff happening in the news and being acknowledged. And the question is it accelerating, or have things always been this weird, but we just didn't talk about them? And I tend to think it's the latter. I tend to think that things have always been this weird, but for some reason now it's okay to talk about them.
Yeah, and to like report them. And I feel like, Twitter and in just the Las Vegas, I think, is a perfect example of, even if it comes out to be a hoax, great. It was able to be hoaxed in 24 hours. And so we don't have to drag it on of like trying to figure out and making these people celebrities, and then they disappoint when it's all bullshit. And so I think like the more that we can, and Twitter's, and like what was cool in the Twitter space a couple of times is that people who have had sightings in real time and that post evidence come into the space and are like, they're like, yeah, this is what I saw. And then like, like somebody like Mick West would pop in, or a skeptic, and be like, oh, it's this. But in real time, they're like figuring it out. I think that to be able to be comfortable enough to jump in and to openly say, this is what I saw. It was unnormal. Can somebody help me figure out? And there, nobody's like, that's bullshit. Get out of here, alien boy.
Well, the other thing too is that, like, I've only had 2 sightings in my life, but you instantly know when it's something different. I don't know how to describe that to you, but it's like when I hear of somebody's level of sincerity with what they're talking about, I mean, I know they saw something truly odd, because I'm an aerospace guy. I pretty much know everything in the sky. And when I had these 2 sightings, it just felt like, it didn't just feel like, oh, this is human technology. It felt like there's some weird intelligence behind this. And I don't know, the Vegas thing too. It's like, I see the way those people reacted when they opened the back fence, and went to walk in their backyard and they saw this thing, and that strikes me as pretty genuine. Like they saw something really that freaked them out a little bit. So I don't know. I think it's great that we have this platform, and that it's now more open than it was, and that we're able to discuss these things and all the other things you can now talk about on here. Because to me, I always felt like the solution wasn't to come up with a conservative Twitter or a non-censored Twitter. The answer was always to fix Twitter, and it feels like that's what's happening. And I think it's going to be the preeminent information platform, because literally you can open it up in the morning and you can find out everything that's happening in the world like instantly, and then you can find out what the true story is, because there's all these people going, no, that's not what happened, this is what happened. Like you said, it's just a great tool, and I'm really happy to be here.
One of the things that I feel like is a missing link, and you kind of pointed to it earlier, is something like parapsychology, where like the link between science and spirituality, and that there's some way I feel like somebody like J.B. Ryan and the parapsychologists that have been able to come up with testing stuff. Like, what do you see as like a missing link in maybe a lot of the occult or paranormal experiences and even the UFO stuff? Do you see like that as being like a missing link in terms of the scientific side of it?
Yeah, it's just like the information is out there. It's just getting the information out. It's just getting it to be a common knowledge, to people. Like, they did a lot of ESP experiments at Stanford Research Institute, and there was a study by a Dr. Spottiswoode, I believe his name was, who was British, and they found out that ESP like accelerates dramatically. There's a time aspect to it. At 13:30 local sidereal time, between noon and 13:30, so in other words, between noon and 1:30 local sidereal time, people's ESP skyrockets, and they don't know why, but it does happen. And local sidereal time is the time when during the day the center of the galaxy, Sagittarius A, is most directly over your location. And that's not an accident. That's not a coincidence. There's something behind that. And yet these kinds of things are not studied, and they're not they're not understood, and they're not acknowledged. So I think that what we need to do is just talk about a lot of experiments that have already been done, and then do them again and keep doing them until it becomes sort of part of our baseline of information. Because there's a lot of problems in science and physics that we're never going to solve, because we're not operating with the full data set. We're only operating with part of the belief system. It becomes another belief system. Einstein and relativity don't work, because Einstein based all his equations on what he thought were John Clerk Maxwell's equations. Well, they weren't. They were Oliver Heaviside's equations. And he took out all of Maxwell's higher dimensional aspects. In other words, Maxwell believed that the universe wasn't just three-dimensional, that it was 4 and 5 and 6-dimensional. And he put that in his original work, but then this other guy, Heaviside, removed it all. And I do believe he was a Mason. So in other words, Einstein's working with a subset of reality. He's not working with reality. So consequently, we can't figure things out, like how to go faster than light and how to generate, free energy. We're stuck.
I think I could literally ask you questions for like a billion years, Mike.
That's flattering.
How kind of I just really enjoy your take on stuff. I'm really, really big on the whole consciousness side of things. That's how me and Astral kind of connected, is, we're into the whole highest human initiated contact and all that kind of caper. I just wonder what's your take on it. Could our understanding of consciousness be kind of influenced by past human interactions with extraterrestrial intelligence or advanced technologies? Like, I would just love to know what your belief is and your views are around this whole consciousness thing in connection to them.
Well,
perhaps?
A lot of people have experimented with this. I mean, it comes back to one simple question, right? Does consciousness create the universe, or does the universe create consciousness? Right?
Hell yeah.
We don't know the answer to that question, but I tend to think that consciousness creates the universe. It's really interesting because I last October I was lucky. I got to spend 3 or 4 days in Manchester, England, with Whitley Strieber and Richard Doty, and we did a conference there for the Awakening UFO people. And
Mike, we actually met for about 2 brief
oh my
seconds.
God, did I meet you there? I'm so sorry.
We did. It was very, very, very brief, and I had a terribly broken leg, and I ran Whitley's shoe over with a wheelchair. So on that basis, I scooted off very, very quickly. So I was there, and it was a great event.
Yeah, you were in a wheelchair. Did you say?
Yeah, that was me.
Okay,
That was me.
I vaguely remember. I don't think we got a picture or anything, so I don't remember you.
No, we didn't. I was too busy running at guests over by the sounds of it. But yeah, carry on.
Well, I was just going to say, he has a lot of interesting thoughts on consciousness. Now, there are people, and I'm not going to mention any names, Graham Hancock, who think that the way to consciousness is through, hallucinogenic drugs. And there's a lot of people trying to explore that and thinking that they can meet aliens in those realms. And I'm nobody to say that they can't. So I think those experiments are interesting and need to continue. But I'm somebody who, personally, I don't trust the aliens. Okay. I'm not aware that we asked them for any help. So when people say, oh, I had a very good friend, Stephen Jones. I was on a show with him. He's English, and I was on a show with him called Uncovering Aliens in 2014, and he's got a lot of contact experiences. And he's like, oh, they're here to help us with the next step in our evolution. That's my bad British accent, by the way, Holly.
We'll let that slide. We'll let that slide,
like,
Mike.
And then there's Daryl Sims, who was also on the show, who's like, the alien is evil. We always chop him up into sushi and eat him. He tastes like chicken. And I don't know that I'm kind of in between those two positions. It's like, I'm thinking we didn't ask for any help with the evolution of our consciousness. I think we should do that on our own, through our own processes. What we need to do is stop all the interference, because I think that our natural tendencies have been interfered with a lot of times by these secret societies we talked about earlier. I think that they've definitely influenced our thinking and our culture, and we need to sort of kick those people out. At the same time, I feel like we should kick the aliens out. I mean, here's the thing. I believe firmly that we're stronger than the aliens are that are visiting us. They may have some technology that on the surface appears to be superior, but it's like, we're not on their planet. Doing unspeakable things to them on a examination table and taking their DNA. They're on our planet, so they're by definition weaker than us, because they need something from us, and I'm not aware that we need anything from them. We've managed to make it to a pretty high level of civilization without any of their help, as far as we know. So I kind of feel like the consciousness thing, it's up to us to sort out for ourselves. And there's many ways you can do it. I mean, some people meditate. Whitley told me, it was funny, the first night I was there, I was sleeping in this it was a very odd hotel. It's like an old English hotel. And about 3 a.m, I felt like something pushed me. And I just sort of woke up, and I'm like, oh, that was kind of weird. But sometimes you twitch when you're asleep and stuff, right? I rolled over and went back to sleep. And then the next day at breakfast, Whitley Strieber said, yeah, every night I commune with the visitors. And I'm like, you do? He goes, yeah, I meditate and I commune with them, and I try to get them to talk to me and make contact and all this stuff. And I was just like, Whitley, what time of the night do you do that? He goes, well, 3 a.m. Exactly. I get up every night at 3 a.m. And I said, what room are you in? And he's like, 216. And I was in 215. So it's like, wow, did his friend sort of give me a push? Hey, shove me in the back while they were going into his room. I don't know. But I think that it's just, there's such an extraordinary opportunity here. If we could start taking all this stuff more seriously, to wake ourselves up. And, again, I'm not a big hallucinogenic drug guy, but if that's what works for you, great. And maybe you will contact extraterrestrial intelligence doing that. I don't know. I'm not one to say you can't or you shouldn't, but I know it's not for me.
I think what was really super interesting about that event, it was probably Steve Mara he's actually joining us for a chat on a space tomorrow. He does have, he really gets some great guests. But what was really interesting to me, as someone who's been in this world for some time, was the demographic split of people that attended that event that you were at. It was different to your usual UFO crowd or Star Trek crowd. It seemed that it was opened up a little bit more. So I feel like the conversation is certainly moving and hitting different sort of groups of people for sure. But yeah, it was a good event. So yeah, we've got Stephen tomorrow, because I know he's got another one coming up this year. So he's going to be talking on it.
Is one of the best researchers out there. He gets like no attention, but he's just so great at what he does. And one of the few people, like, I actually texted him last night about some of the other things that have been in the news this week, and I'm like, Steve, tell me, am I off the reservation here? Am I the only one who sees this and this and this? And he's like, no. And so when he tells me I'm on the right track, I'm really sure that I am, because I think Steve is just a great researcher and a kind of guy we need in this industry, or whatever it is. I don't know what it is.
Yeah, absolutely. So that segues really nicely into what have been your thoughts with all of this that has come out in the past couple of days. I personally feel like I took a hit of acid, because every time I read something, my brain just recalibrates. But what is your take? What are your thoughts on it all?
On which one specifically? The Grosh thing, or what's his name? Grosh?
Yeah. I think there's so many variations of his name. I'm going to go with Dave Grush. I'm going to be very British
or something. Okay,
Grush about it.
I don't want to be the guy that pees in everybody's punch bowl, but it sounds to me. Well, here, I'm just going to say it. All right, I'm 90% sure he's already got a deal for a TV show with a certain network that shows a lot of this kind of programming, and I would be shocked if he's not on his new show by September. Let me just put it that way. I think this whole thing was designed to take advantage of UFO Twitter Week. I think it's just a story, and then we find out that a lot of his information. I'm aware of information that we have crashed alien spacecraft and alien bodies, which that's like, did you watch the X-Files in 1993, and that was on, and there were the MJ-12 documents. So there's nothing new here. There's no evidence. He doesn't bring forward any evidence or documents or anything to that effect that can be investigated. And then I find out that one of the guys who he talked with is Stephen Greer. So I'm like, so Greer's been saying this stuff for 20 years now. And I'm like, did he just sit down with Greer and Greer told him this, that, and the other thing? And now this guy comes out and says, this is my information, but it actually just came from Stephen Greer. I mean, I don't know, but I don't trust what's going on. And I'll tell you something, just my gut instinct is anytime I see the media get in lockstep behind a story like this, I automatically assume the story is not true and that there's a narrative behind it. And then I feel like my task is to figure out what the narrative is. And so I got to be honest, I don't think much of this. I'm not too excited about it. If you guys want to get excited about it, go ahead. But if this guy ends up on TV in the fall, with his own show, we did the same thing with Lou Elizondo, and that turned out to be not very substantive in the end, that whole thing. So, I feel like there's a lot of people that want to take advantage of our curiosity with these kind of sensationalized stories, to be honest. That's what I think.
Interesting take, Mike. Absolutely interesting take. So what would disclosure be like for you if it was served on a silver platter tomorrow? What would that look like?
Well, first of all, it would have to be a story that was believable and didn't have holes in it. It wouldn't be, it was a weather balloon, but it was a top secret weather balloon. It would have to be some documentation that whose pedigree could be established as authentic from the period, which I would have to have somebody like Dr. Bob Wood out in California do the authentication before I'd really believe it. And it would probably have to be, if it wasn't questioned by the mainstream media at first, I wouldn't believe it. I would say, in other words, they would try to shoot it down if it was true. So to me, disclosure to me is something that's just going to happen with each of our individual, again, let's use your word, consciousness, as we become more aware that this phenomenon is real. And it's not just based on personal experience. Like, I knew aliens existed before I ever had a sighting, because didn't have to be experiential. It was evidential. I just looked at all the people and I looked at the stories, and I felt like people like Whitley were sincere, and Betty and Barney Hill case was very strong. So to me, disclosure just looks like a sort of universal acknowledgement of what we already know. There's the joke, and I don't want to get political here if I can avoid it, but the old Epstein didn't kill himself thing. It's a meme because everybody knows the guy didn't commit suicide, right? It's going to be the same thing for disclosure. I don't think any official government proclamation is going to create an environment of disclosure. It's just going to be a situation where everybody just agrees in general. 80% of us, 90% of us, we all know there's aliens. And I actually think we're getting there. I think we're getting close to that.
Do you think the main opposition is because of like the cover-up part of it, and not like letting people know that there's aliens, but it's like that they've been covering it up and there's been some kind of dark shit that they've done to do that?
Yes. Yeah, I think that's a big problem. So you have to have a sort of general amnesty with that information and those people. But then do you want to give them amnesty? I mean, if they've killed people to keep them quiet because of aliens, shouldn't somebody pay a price for that? I don't know. I think that they should. So I think that's a big issue, is that they've got to cover up some of the darkness they did. Also, I believe that we are blind to the true power structures on this planet. And again, this gets me into areas that aren't purely about UFOs, but I think it would expose the real power structure. And that's actually the biggest problem. Like, we talk about the face on Mars. I'm one of the world's leading experts on the face on Mars. Probably I'd call myself number 2 after Richard Hoagland, right? Who's the genius. But okay, so there's an ancient civilization on Mars. That's not the problem. The reason they won't admit it is because then the questions get asked, what happened to that civilization? Oh, well, it got destroyed. Well, what did they get destroyed by? Well, a planet really nearby it exploded. And the next question is, well, wait a minute, planets can explode? Yeah. And then, well, don't we live on a planet? Well, yeah, we do. I mean, so then, you see where that goes? It goes to this whole process of, if you lift your foot off the ant hill just a little bit, then all the ants are going to run out. They're going to escape. There's enough room. So they cannot have that, because I think the power structures that we have on this planet are lies. And, the reasons for going to war are lies. And so I think it's more that that's what they would expose, is that things do not work the way we think they do, that it doesn't matter who we vote for. It's all a game. And I think that's their big fear. And aliens are a huge part of that. So, I expect that this is going to be a very active thing for those of us that are looking. But I don't think we should put our faith in what a government tells us. You don't need the government to tell you that these beings are real. You don't need the government to tell you that flying saucers are real. You don't need the government to tell you that there are beings from other planets that are visiting here. You know that, and you stand in that truth, and you don't need them then to acknowledge it. I mean, really, that's all disclosure ends up becoming, is acknowledgement from some authority figure. Well, take their authority away from them.
Awesome, thank you,
Sorry.
Mike. Yeah, sorry, it was me stuttering. I'm conscious we don't have too much of your time left. One wonders, what have you got coming up in the future? I know you're doing a lot of, you've got some interviews and stuff lined up, but what can we, if you've got any new books coming out, where are we going to see you? What's in the future?
Besides moving to Vegas in a couple months, probably.
Oh wow!
Yeah,
Nice.
that'll be fun. That'll take up a lot of my time. Well, I'm helping write episodes for the Y-Files, which is a great YouTube channel if you haven't been on it. And AJ is a skeptical guy, but I try to work on getting him to open up. So you should go to that channel and start watching the show. It's a great show, and they're really picking up in popularity. And it's cool because it's like, Holly, it's like what you said. Or maybe it was you, Astral, that it reaches an audience that a younger audience that we're not reaching with the Ancient Aliens show. So I'll be doing a lot of that. I have an appearance in Las Vegas in September, and so I'll be doing that. That's like September 14th at the Alexis Park Resort in Las Vegas. I'll be there. Brad Olson is going to be there. Laura Eisenhower is going to be there. I think Brooks Agnew might be coming, Dr. Brooks, who's a friend of mine and a great guy. And I got that show. And then I'm doing the World UFO Conference or World Ufology Conference in Barcelona, Spain the next week. So those are two things that are coming up. And then there's another History Channel TV show, whose name escapes me, that does like quick stories on photographs, like that photograph of, we did the glass worms on Mars, or the glass tunnels on Mars. So I'll be doing you might see a little snippet of me there. And that's really about it. It's going to be a slow couple of months, probably.
Awesome. Thank you. Astro, have you got anything you want to add?
Well, I just posted the channel up top. So if anybody wants to check out the WA files, I posted the episode. I think it was about the Mars phase.
Oh yeah.
So one of the latest ones that you did.
Yeah, that's one of the ones I helped write. I did about half of it, and then AJ changed about half of it. So it's like, but it's his show, and he does a fantastic job getting information out to people, and that's really a cool show. Although I'm not getting paid by them, so just so you know.
Well, I feel like too, media is going to be a really important part of how this comes out. When, like, 15 years ago, it was kind of only Ancient Aliens and maybe a couple documentaries, and now there's this podcast and all. Like, maybe you could talk to like the importance maybe of media coming out and how the information is going to be shared, like you referred
to.
The
democratization of media is really important. A friend of mine named Darcy Weir has been doing documentaries, and I just recently did one for him. I think it was Moon UFOs, Apollos 1 to 11. So that's on Prime or something like that. And there's all these people making all these documentaries, and they're good. They're not crap. They're not fan fiction or something. They're really good shows and really being well put together. And that's forcing the mainstream networks to up their game. And then you have shows like the Y-Files, and you have Twitter Spaces, and you have other YouTube channels. Although let's face it, YouTube does a lot of censorship. So it's not always easy to even discuss the UFO subject openly. You've got, Dark Journalist is very popular, I know, on YouTube, but they have to dance around these algorithms. And so what I'm hoping and thinking is that we're going to become the media, because you can't centralize the media, because then you get the same story from everybody. And I mean, you've probably seen these videos of, this local news station, the reporters say this, and then the next station, they say the same thing, and the next station, this station. And it's obvious somebody sent the orders down from on high, from these 6 major corporations that own most media outlets. So the fact that we have social media and we have stuff like Twitter is going to be crucial to figuring out the truth and getting it out to people, because let's face it, like there are people on the internet that have a couple of million followers, and people, they're famous on the internet, but then the people that watch Ancient Aliens, the over 50 crowd, let's say, they have no clue who that guy is, right? So we have a process where we've got a balkanized media, which means that we have all these new opportunities to do the people's journalism. And that's what we need to do with the UFO thing. And I mean, UFO Twitter has taught me that there's a lot of very, very good researchers out there that aren't getting maybe the attention that they should, because they're doing great work. And I think it's really, really important that we support all that work. So we're lucky. We live in an age where we can go around the newspapers, and we can go around 60 Minutes, and we can go around the mainstream media and do our own research and get the word out on our own, in our own way and in our own words.
But you also, I guess, think that in the latest article too, that there could be a bigger narrative that could be taking place, that, other mainstream or looked at news could be falling in line.
Yeah.
In a way.
Yeah. I mean, I do think the fake alien invasion is on the table. I do think it's on the table. I look, let's be honest, as you look at, if you watch the news, there's a war going on. There's at least one war going on. And there's a political war inside the U.S., which I think is being really orchestrated by these secret societies. I'll go there. I'll go to the crazy place. And then externally, we have all these circumstances just ripe for World War III, for an open conflict and a physical World War III kind of battle. And so if there's a war going on, then you're going to have you're going to have to get the truth out to people somehow. And as I see it, I just think it's going to be a very volatile, very eventful couple of months. And I caution everybody to not be scared, because you might see World War III on your TV screen, but that doesn't mean it's happening to you. You look around your own location, right, and pay attention to what's happening in your area, and that's what matters.
Cool. Thanks, Mike.
Did I answer the question?
Yeah, no, yeah,
I don't remember.
absolutely.
Sometimes I'll get in the middle of an answer and like, okay, what did he ask me? I was going somewhere with that.
Mike, do you mind? I mean, we've got a couple people that are requesting to come
Sure.
up. Do you have about maybe 10 more minutes or so? We can
I
still
do.
leave it open.
I do. Yeah, I'm
Great.
good.
Yeah, if anybody else wanted to pop up, I see a couple people requesting already, but feel free to pop up. We've got Mike for about 10 more minutes. You can ask him some questions.
Is it Will? Do you want to fire away?
Hey, how's it going?
Hi, Will.
Astral, how you doing? Holly? Mike, this
Hey,
is
what's up,
the
man?
first time I believe I'm speaking to you.
Welcome.
You might be interested to hear my story. Astral has heard it. Holly, I think you've heard it. But Mike, I enlisted in the Army in 2001, and I shipped out November 15th from MEPS. And part of my shipping out was getting a security clearance.
Mm-hmm.
So at the James F. Hanley Federal Building in downtown Syracuse on the 5th floor, I went to go do my clearance, and I saw an alien in person. We were as little as 6 feet apart.
Wow.
I would have to change my underwear after that experience, I think. Okay, I just peed myself. Hello, Krill. How are you? Nice to meet you.
Oh, Mike, you are funny.
So if you have anything you want to ask me, fire away.
Yeah, I do, but I mean, this is again, this guy Grosh or whatever his name is, it's like Clifford Stone tells the same story, only Clifford personally experienced. I mean, he was on crash retrieval teams, but he died a few years ago, and he was one of the old school, Roswell guys, and you don't hear his story, and it's like, but Clifford, his story is more credible in many ways, because he's got this. He told you the names of these projects, and so it's like I read this stuff.
He was in the programs. He was touching the shit.
Yeah,
he was involved.
And it's like I interviewed Clifford for a show back in like 2014 or 2015, and I feel like that when I see this new story, it's basically just pulling some of his information and pulling other people's information and coming up with a new narrative, which we got to. Corey Good got himself into a lot of trouble with all that stuff a few years ago.
Oh, you didn't mention Corey, did you?
I did.
Uh-oh.
I went there. Yeah, we're all going to get sued now. I did that. So I mean, I just feel like there's people out there with credible stories like yours, and what would I like to? Well, I mean, I assume? Was it a gray type alien? Was it taller? Was it one of the praying mantis types, or what was it?
Was roughly my height, somewhere between 5'5" and 5'10".
Okay, so it was the tall types. Was it humanoid or gray alien? Or
it was humanoid, light dolphin gray in color, small black eyes initially, human size, but when he got closer, they got bigger. And when he realized that I wasn't supposed to see him because I was being escorted to a security clearance screening, he went to go shut the door, and he looked terrified because I'm pretty sure that I shouldn't have seen him and he shouldn't have seen me.
Yeah.
So he opened up his mouth a little bit. I got to see his teeth. They were small, kind of pointy.
Yeah.
He didn't look menacing at all.
Yeah,
he was wearing a black suit, white shirt, black tie. typical MIB look.
It's so weird. Yeah, is he an MIB? And the thing is too is
I don't know for sure, but he was. He looked to be briefing a room of young engineers. There were two closest to the door that leaned over and saw me in the doorway. And this young Asian kid, he looked to be about 14 or 15. He looked terrified. The ginger that was next to him, he looked at me real quick, and then he quickly snapped eyes forward. But the
ginger that was next to him.
This poor Asian kid, he looked scared out of his mind.
Yeah. And I mean, like another thing, Holly, at the conference, I hung around with Richard Doty quite a bit, and he says he saw the original Roswell footage, and I believe him. I think he's credible in that department. So I know that there's aliens here. I know we're working with him, and it's even weirder because you have, I've had people tell me that I think have some credibility that there's like two civilizations living in the hollows of the earth, not the hollow earth like it's a shell, but in caverns and stuff below the ground, and that there's two of them, and they look a lot like us. So I'm like, are these men in black? Are they these other residents of Earth, or did they come from somewhere else? I mean, we don't know. So it's that story is.
We've had Doty in a space, dude. Doty was in a space. He went
great.
like 7 hours.
Oh yeah.
And so he was just going all different. But I think one of the things too he touched on was like the US, like we haven't even explored it in a sense, is like the USOs. Like our oceans, and maybe you could touch on that, of what your thoughts are of like just exploring that aspect.
Well, I'm. It's funny you should bring it up. I'm trying to talk the Y-Files guys into letting me do a Bermuda Triangle episode, because I did do a book on the Bermuda Triangle, and one of the things that I found was, I believe that there was a shipwreck, famous submarine USS Scorpion was lost in 1968 or 69, and I was watching. I found some of the photographs that have been released. There's photographs of the wreckage, and that's a really weird wreck because they found the bow and they found the stern, but they didn't find the middle of the ship, and it's really, really weird. And the story, this is just a story from somebody I know, Bob Dean. I don't know if you guys know who Bob Dean was, but he's an old school UFO guy. Used to work at NATO, had a lot of contacts. And he said that they were chasing. They went to Haiti. They were refitted with special anti-UFO weaponry on that submarine, and they chased this USO through the Bermuda Triangle. And then at some point, they were over the deepest water. It turned on them and hit them with some sort of EMP weapon, and then the ship just sank to crush depth and disappeared. And I'm like, okay, that's really cool. So then I was watching TV, and I'm like, okay, there's this movie on called The Abyss, directed by James Cameron. 1989, Ed Harris, Mary Elizabeth Mastrantonio. I'll turn this on. I turn it on, and it opens up, and it's a submarine. And the submarine is clearly this same configuration as the Scorpion, right? And it's chasing a USO underwater, and the USO turns around and hits it with an EMP pulse, and the ship sinks and shatters. And the whole story is about how they have a naval SEAL team go in to try to retrieve the nuclear missiles, right? And as they find the wreck of this thing, they show pictures of the back of the ship with the hatches popped open and the stern of the ship. And I'm like, these are the exact same pictures of the Scorpion wreck. But when Cameron made this movie in 1989 or 88, he actually made it, they were classified. They weren't declassified, I think, until the late 90s of the wreck. So he had seen those classified photos, and I'm just sitting there going, okay, somebody's trying to tell us that USOs are a thing and that we've had an encounter with them, at least one, and it didn't end well for us. So that's all I got on that front, I suppose.
Wow, I'm sure both Astral and I could ask questions all night. We've got another question. Speedy, do you want to? This will probably be our last one because Mike's got other engagements. So, Speedy, do you want to fire away? Speedy, you there, bud?
Speedy, did we lose you? Speedy.
He might just jump. Here we go.
Oh, is it working now? I've never used this before, so Am I on?
You're
We
on,
can hear you.
Speedy. You are live on Channel
Oh,
4.
great. Okay. I apologize for the amateur response there. I happen to be a specialist in consciousness, and I just wanted to comment the absolute biggest mistake you could make is to think that hallucinogenics are really going to be pertinent with regard to consciousness, and those who actually believe that are making a big mistake. And that happens from experience as far back as 1970. So there is an elevated level of consciousness, and it takes work. It's not a quick, simple pill kind of thing. Am I still on?
Yeah.
You're still on. The audio is a little bit scratchy, Speedy. So yeah,
Well, I
we've
muted him.
just
But
yeah.
no, he had a great question though. That's a great point.
No, I agree, and it's like I just don't think that. I mean, they are hallucinogenic drugs, right? So they do create hallucinations. Well, hallucinations are non-real experiences that feel real. So, like, how do you know the difference between that and a genuine connection you might make in an astral plane or something like that? So, I mean, I understand that, but I think we need to let people experiment. If that helps them, I have a friend and her life was pretty messed up, and she got into ayahuasca and mushrooms, and although I I would not live that lifestyle myself. She's doing better. And it's like there are certain religions I don't necessarily concur with, but there are people I know who go to those religions and go to those churches and they get better. So as long as it helps people, I don't care. I don't want to limit it, but yeah, I mean if somebody says, "Well, I contacted, Krill from you know, Alpha Centauri on by using ayahuasca," I'm gonna go, "You sure you didn't just have a hallucination there?" So I don't think we can place a lot of value in that. On the other hand, I have psychic friends. The difference with the psychic friends is that you can test what they predict, and I found there is such a thing, I think, as psychic abilities. The question is, how does it work? What's stimulated in the brain? We don't know any of that stuff. So, but I just think as far as it goes, if it helps get somebody to a better place in their life, then I'm okay with it. Although, yeah, I don't think we should. It's a personal thing for them. It's their experience. It's not a mutually shared experience, right? I mean, if we all got together and did LSD, we'd all have a different experience, wouldn't we? I mean, none of us would have the same one.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, it would. Yeah, for sure. Wow. We're hitting on the hour, Mike. So we don't want to take up too much of your time. So I personally just wanted to say thank you so much for joining us. It's been great to have you here. Hopefully this will be the start of many more. I
Yeah.
won't bug you too much, but I'm lying. I probably will. So thank you so much. Astro?
No, yeah, thanks again, Mike. Did you want to say anything? I'm gonna just kind of promo Twitter Week before I send it off, but I wanted to give you the kind of chance to maybe talk about what the next Y files or you're working on, or anything in the near future we can look forward to as well.
Well, I mean, last night they did Cozy Rev's Mirror, which I contributed a script to that. I don't know if they used any of it. I'll have to watch the episode to see. But that's about Nikolai Kozyrev. He's a person that you guys, if you're interested in higher dimensional physics and if you're interested in how to get free energy, you should study Nikolai Kozyrev, you guys. So I would say that'd be a good thing to go watch. I haven't watched it myself. I'm sure they'll do a great job on it. No, I don't really have much. I mean, I'm going to be doing this show and then come see me in Vegas. And if you're in Europe, by all means, at Barcelona, the Ufology Congress should be a great event. I know that Whitley is going to be there. Whitley Strieber, who's always fantastic to listen to. So that's really it. I really want to tell you guys I appreciate being here and thank you for having me. And yeah, Holly, let's do it some more. I think this is a great way to meet people in a different platform and from a different demographic maybe than I normally do. So I appreciate the opportunity very much.
For sure. Well, thank you so much. I'll definitely be in touch anyway. But have a great day tomorrow.
Thanks.
And thank you for everyone for tuning in. Astral, as always, you do a phenomenal curation of putting UFO Twitter Week together. So thank you for letting me be part of it as well. And I'll let you promote your week, and I'll stop speaking for once.
No, thank you, Holly. Holly's the best. She put a lot of these great speakers, including Mike, together for this week, and has helped me and has been just invaluable and a great partner in the spaces to co-host. Thanks again, Mike. UFO Twitter Week continues, man. It's just been such a great week. I appreciate everybody who's come to the spaces. We got a couple more coming up tonight, including he's like, let me come in here. We got a couple more coming up tonight, including Brian Johnson in tech in about an hour. And then later on tonight, I'm going to jump in with Reptile Hybrid. It's going to be kind of an entertaining, funny, and great and educating space. Should be fun. But thanks again, everybody, for coming out. Have a good night. Let's keep it going.
Bye.